Let me go on to the next speaker, please. And that is John Klar, my friend, who is a farmer. He grows animals. He is also an attorney, and he's also a writer. And he has written this lovely book about farming. And I would like to, he's writing another book now. So look for that. He's only early on in that process, but he will tell us more about the food system and how farmers, small farmers, are being squeezed. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Meryl. I'm so excited to join this panel, and I've been asked to address the issues of regenerative farming and agriculture versus industrial agriculture. Humanity today faces what I will here term official trust anxiety, because science has been co-opted by politics and moneyed interests. It's as if there are two sciences afoot in the world, two sciences about the amazing benefits or nightmarish horrors of transgender hormones and surgeries, two sciences about the origins of COVID-19, the efficacy of masks, whether ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are effective. There seem to be two different sciences, and two different sciences about climate change and the impacts of carbon dioxide on our Earth. And there are many other examples of this confusion of our modern world where we have two sciences. And so, in addressing the contrast between industrial agriculture and traditional land stewardship, as we would call it, I must emphasize that there are not two sciences. There are two completely different systems with dramatically disparate scientific impacts. In understanding our food supplies, then, there is no scientific conflict, only a conflict of spin in which science is focused on and which system we're looking at. To help understand this, I'm going to explain, in contrast, the recent historical shift by humanity into the techno-mystical world of modern industrial, quote unquote, science. Wendell Berry, some of you may know, is a Kentucky author, a lot of whose ideas I'm trying to carry forward for our time. And he's written about this for 6 decades, notably in his seminal work, The Unsettling of America. In a relatively brief period, what he chronicles there, aided by government programs and university scientists, most of our nation's food production was shifted to modern industrial methods that in the short term dramatically increased production, earning the deceptive moniker, the Green Revolution. The technologies involved are truly amazing. They really are. Synthetic fertilizers to replace manure, heavy tractors to till the ground in place of horses, genetically modified crops to replace heirloom varieties, and proprietary corporate rights every step of the way. What could go wrong? Wendell has shown us the society destroying dehumanization that this so-called miracle has wrought. Rural culture and economies have been hollowed out by a seismic, unnatural migration of agricultural labor into our cities, where there might or might not be purposeful jobs for people. Our food is grown farther and farther away, and it's ever less nutritious, adulterated by ever more chemical adjuncts to boost yields, extend shelf life, stimulate our appetites, or persuade us to ingest something that is not actually food via artificial chemical flavorings. Let us contrast these two systems using a common science, and let us increase our understanding of these conflicting systems using a brief study of cows and soil. That's what I've been asked to do for you today. So this is what I'm doing. I'm going to talk about cows and soil. It should be very simple, we would think. We modern humans have nearly severed our umbilical cord to the earth and soil, replaced with a plastic polymer tube direct from factory to navel. I'm actually borrowing an idea from one of Wendell Berry's essays. If corporate America could do that, by the way, they would, as Wendell has pointed out. So let's consider the difference between these different nutrition delivery systems of food production. Hydrogenated fat and high fructose corn syrup are just two so-called foodstuffs that are more like waste products converted to people fodder. We are told instead that cows are destroying all life by their burping, and that GMOs and their chemical dependency are the only way to feed the world. You'll hear this over and over. If that's true, we will all eventually starve to death. Our very lives and most all of our health issues are directly and inseparably tied to the soil that we kill and alienate ourselves from with these chemicals and industrial processes that, again, look so great, but it's an illusion. Livestock connect us directly to the soil in these processes. Grass blades are renewable solar panels that replenish and retain soils. Grass is inedible by humans, but our cows and other codependent companions, because we are truly symbiotic, kindly convert these self replicating solar panels into nutritious proteins, fats, and carbohydrates that we can eat. Industrial agriculture has invested a century striving to intrude itself into that connection for profit and power. And now all the largest food manufacturers in the world are all sitting together as partners at the World Economic Forum to save the world, to feed the world, to help our health, not profits, not advocating the sale of their chemicals, to rescue humanity from the destruction that they have wrought. A lot of money. Consider the consequences of industrial interruption of our human connection to life-giving soils. Cows have been concentrated into feedlots, fed grain in lieu of grass, and fossil fuels have been employed to move their water, feed, manure, and bodies from factory to freezer. It is cheap, efficient, and thus economically profitable. But what are the impacts on the soil and on our food supplies, on the climate? This is where we see the supposed science of cows sharply diverges. Industrial America will claim cows raised on grain finish sooner than grass-fed cows, which is true, and so the climate is saved by reducing their earthly bovine fart time. But just as oxymoronically named renewables are examined for carbon dioxide without regard to the myriad ecotoxins spewed in their distant coal-fired manufacture, this effort to malign cows ignores the externalized costs of the grain that speeds their path to slaughter. That grain is monocultured, patented GMO crops of corn and soy. To spare the world cow farts, industrial agriculture rips up the earth with tractors rather than let cows meander around and forage. It sprays the soil with microbe-killing glyphosate and a panoply of potential pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides that our USDA and FDA tell us are not harmful to humans, but the rest of the world seems to differ. And many of our speakers will show us that there's a lot of scientific evidence out there that suggests that maybe these chemicals aren't so good. The tractors roar over the compressed ground repeatedly using fossil fuels to replace cows' legs. Then they harvest, transport, process, and retransport this vaunted grain to factory farms. So the soil has been weakened. Erosion has been increased. Less water is retained by depleted soils. Drawing down precious underground water aquifers, they are a limited resource. Grains change the cow's chemistry and biology as well, and not for the better. But wait, it's all about carbon dioxide and cow farts. Let's fix it all with grain and dependency on a monocultured destructive crop. That's what they're peddling. The science is consistent. There's really no discussion about this if you study the science. The cows thus imprisoned and unnaturally fed are then maligned for their carbon emissions without regard to the industrial waste stream created to enslave them. Let us contrast this scandalous marginalization of victimized industrial bovines with the soil building science of their rotationally grazed cousins still bounding happily across rich green pastures. Their manure feeds the soil instead of synthetic urea manufactured from natural gas, also known as methane. The resulting microbial life from the cow's manure, forget their gases for a minute, sequesters far more carbon dioxide and methane than these cows would ever emit through their burps or flatulence. If that's all we looked at, carbon dioxide and methane. The fossil fuels and the chemicals used to destroy soils to unsustainably grow grains is halted completely when you put a cow back on pasture, while organic matter thrives and soil quality and quantity increase. Bison built the Great Plains. Now we're saying we need chemicals created in a factory to replace that process. Healthy soils increase crop productivity and nutrient content, decrease erosion, and actually cleanse the water and air of the ecotoxins that are being spewed out in this otherwise big ag industry and many other industries. These ecotoxins that include carcinogens, endocrine disruptors, forever chemicals, and all kinds of nasty stuff that we somehow set aside in our sole metric of carbon dioxide and methane when we look at cows. So does this starting to make sense? I hope that we're being lied to about the science, but not really, because this is true science about industrial agriculture. And why would you then just try as a solution to double down on that destructive process unless it was for profit? To press on with destructive industrial agricultural practices in the name of sparing the world from cows leads to scientifically foreseeable consequences called desertification, the destruction of our soils. We're killing our nation's soils and water supplies in a rapacious short-term frenzy of profit and waste. Wendell Berry wrote about this in his recent book, The Art of Loading Brush. So I'll just read briefly what he quotes from yet more ancient wisdom that we weren't brought by Bill Gates and the techno-mystics. Farmers of 40 Centuries was published in 1911. In 1929, Wendell chronicles some of these others' books and a professor of economics. And he quotes to say, what Smith saw was not only our fracture of the fertility cycle, but also another and opposite cycle. Quote, forest, field, plow, desert. That is the cycle of the hills under most plow agriculture. Unquote. That is studying 40 centuries of agriculture. We more and more know that this is what ancient cultures have done to their societies and their soils. And without agriculture, everything else collapses. We take our food for granted in this country. And so this symposium is about trying to help people become more aware of their disconnect from the land, the lies that they're being told, and discern the real science from the false. That's what we're trying to do here. Wendell's written about Wallace Stegner, and his characterization of land settlers is divided into two groups, boomers and nesters. Boomers rape the land of resources and whatever else they can find, and then they move on, kind of like strip miners. Nesters are the true environmentalists. They steward the land intergenerationally, lovingly, and with the knowledge that only comes from that husbandry. In modern society's unprecedented alienation from soil and agriculture, there is an ideology that claims all nesters are colonizers, and that corporate America will rescue humanity from this oppression via a great, grand, new Green Deal. The state will impose moral order and ensure healthy food for all using corporate vehicles and all these great, wonderful technologies. No greater lie has ever been proffered for the human mind to poison itself with. Big ag industrialists are boom and bust exploiters and should never be granted control of human food supplies or cows. The great green revolution, it is in its death throes. And so are humans beguiled by its toxic lies. You know who has the healthiest, most diverse gut microbiomes on the planet today? Amazonian rainforest tribes. Not New York City concrete sidewalk denizens, not millionaires dining on $500 meals full of salt, sugar, and chemical residues that disrupt those little bugs in your gut upon which you depend for life. Climate activists point to the Amazonian rainforest suffering at the hands of farmers as a major climate threat. This contrast, too, is instructive. How many forests are being torn down? How many massive pit mines gouged into the earth? How many coal plants constructed in China to manufacture the expensive gizmos that will end up in landfills, while Brazilians are still sequestering carbon in the soils that converted from forest to grasslands by cutting down the rainforest? They sequester more carbon than trees, longer. Well-fed grasslands. This is the science. Cows on grass do more than letting trees grow back on those grasses. What do the factories do for the renewables? What are they doing for the non-carbon chemicals while we focus on the carbon? What are the other gizmos these factories churn out? What is the ecological cost of manufacturing flat screen TVs or fireworks displays or lawnmowers, leaf blowers? They're really bad. Artificial snow for skiers and artificial turf for golfers. Where is the shaming for leaving the heat up, the lights on, the car running, or taking a long shower? These are not pollutions incurred to eat, which is a necessity. These are much greater and unnecessary toxifications used to play. The EPA has identified 12,035 forever chemicals so far. How many of those are generated in government subsidized EV, solar panel, and windmill construction? How many by industrial agricultural methods? And how many by organic cows masticating God's green grass in a local field? Cows are not our problem. Industrial totalitarianism is our problem. Cows are the antidote to both. The cure for all these ills is plainly before us, and the real science is incontrovertible. Cows are not the problem. Their industrial torturers and slanderers are. Much the same deception is employed to peddle expensive, renewable gadgets that are anything but. So we end up in the same science distorting spin about cows. There are so many informed and passionate speakers in this forum who will help us all learn more so that we can counter falsehood with truth. They are coming for our food. Can you see? Synthetic meat production relies upon the same GMO monocultures as animal grains. Monsanto and Dow make money in agriculture selling chemicals without which their vaunted Frankensteinian products, quote unquote, will not grow. GMO cropping has mostly been driven by profit, not by responding to climate needs. That's why they have patented the seeds. They want to control all of your food. One of the easiest places to see these industrial globalists' lies is to just look at the life cycle and symbiotic balance of cows naturally husbanded on healthy soils. Trust the real science. Trust cows and farmers. Trust nature. Trust common sense. And trust your gut, because your gut depends on a healthy microbiome that ultimately is connected directly to the soil that gives us all life. And just about everything these industrialists are doing kills that connection. So I hope you have learned, and I hope you learned much more here today. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to try to liberate people from the lies that are causing them to eat poorly and support policies for cheap food that cheapen just about everything else in the process. In the end, we can't afford the tab for human health and ecological destruction that this war on cows and farming is inflicting. Thank you again so much for listening. Have a great day.
Thank you, John Klar. You can see how this man is able to put words together so beautifully.